It'll take time to restore chaos.
So, how we doing, fellow liberals? I don't know if Francis Fukuyama's 1992 book, The End of History and the Last Man, was ever taken seriously, but I think we're all in agreement that he was either a liar or an idiot. After 40 years, Western neoliberal democracy is at a complete breaking point. The mask is off, everyone knows it's shit, everyone is pissed off. The only thing we can't agree on is whether we should replace it with decent living standards or fascism. Classic dilemma. And it is at this point in history, when the status quo, the Western-dominated hegemony, has never been more hated, more in need of change, that a film like Heads of State decides to come out and boldly proclaim, no. Heads of State is a film that feels like it time travelled from an alternate universe 2005 into our 2025. Starring Idris Elba and Cena as the British Prime Minister and American President respectively, the film follows the two adversarial world leaders after Air Force One gets shot down, leaving them to fend for themselves while also trying to stop an evil Russian billionaire from destroying NATO. Do I need to go on? Okay, so just before we lose ourselves in the geopolitics, I will say, I actually don't hate this film. It has decent action, and Idris Elba and Cena actually do pretty good in their roles and have decent chemistry with each other. And I have to say, I do respect Cena in general for seemingly actually making a serious jump into acting, and not just making it an ego trip. He's not quite Dave Bautista, but he's actually trying, and that's more than can be said for some of his contemporaries. At the end of the day, the film is entertaining, which I suppose is the least you could hope for from an action film. But what makes this film really weird and fascinating is its geopolitics, and while the film was apparently only written around the turn of the decade, it feels more at home around the turn of the century. Like, you can just imagine this entire film except John Cena and Idris Elba are wearing George Bush and Tony Blair masks the entire time, and it would make 100% more sense. Maybe swap out the Russian billionaire for a generic Arab oil baron or dictator or something. I almost wish it had come out back then. At least then there'd be a logical explanation for it to be the way it is, but for this to be a new film, tone deaf doesn't even begin to describe it. Even ignoring the present context, this film was greenlit when there were two known Russian assets in both the White House and Downing Street, and one of them is still there. To return to the actual story, a central plot point is the US VP actually being a mole who purposefully leaks a ton of national security documents, revealing that the US has been spying on all its allies. This is funny because I just kinda assumed that this was an open secret anyway. American corporations spy on us all the time, why wouldn't the American government? This all culminates in John and Idris, I know they have character names, I don't care, confronting the Vaputis and going, "Guys, we need NATO, we need to treat each other with respect and get on with the job." And then the VP goes on this enlightened Redditor MAGA monologue where she's just, "You woke liberals and you bleeding hearts, America first, baby. We can do everything. We can build, we can manufacture, we can grow." And I find it interesting how not only do they not really push back on any of what she says outside of like morals, but that the VP basically acts as the face of criticism of NATO, as if the most legitimate problems one could have with NATO take the form of open, selfish, right-wing nationalism. Let's make it clear, I ain't a tanky, the enemy of your enemy isn't always your friend. I think there's a reason that wannabe fascists like Trump and Farage look to dictators like Putin for inspiration. In fact, I'm not convinced that Putin isn't some elaborate psyop devised by NATO to make themselves look better in comparison. And in general, I do believe that countries and states, if we're gonna have them, should be working together and coexisting peacefully, rather than fighting each other and accomplishing nothing but killing civilians they probably don't even care about. However, I feel it's disingenuous to claim or even suggest that any criticism of NATO means you're aligned with or enabling authoritarianism or instability. Not only since NATO was a key part in setting up the awful status quo we have in the Middle East, but also, as I see it at least, a lot of criticism of NATO is less about NATO itself and more what NATO is seen to represent and defend. Western imperialism and neoliberalism, both of which everyone is pretty much done with. People are sick and tired of a system and order that just straight up doesn't work for them and seems more interested in killing people hundreds of miles away rather than actually fixing problems. Back in the old Cold War, a lot of people might have been willing to put up with that in the face of what was painted in the colours of a common existential enemy, but now the common enemy is just government everywhere. With wealth inequality, climate collapse, war and genocide running rampant worldwide, shit just feels like we're on the verge of collapse. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, history will tell. Shit, even NATO is somehow simultaneously stronger than ever before, while also still on shakier ground than you would expect, making it doubly amusing that this is the organisation that the film kneels down and sucks off the most. The fact is, the system we're living under, the system this film tries so hard to defend, tries so hard to paint as good just because the other side might be worse, is killing us all and deserves to crash and burn. And I don't think you need to be a dumb MAGA racist to see that. That's ultimately why I find this film so fascinating. Like I said, it's a competent, decently enjoyable action film, but it feels like the last plea of a dying order, knowing it's on its last legs but desperately clinging to life, appealing to us for sympathy, begging not to be put out of its misery. Had this film actually come out in 2005, had it actually been the Blair Bush action flick, I imagine this would have struck a defiant, brash and arrogant tone, like a boxer who's just taken a massive hit but just spits out his teeth and comes roaring back for round 2. But today, in 2025, Heads of State feels more like the dying, desperate gasps of a billionaire dying of cancer, begging for a few extra seconds of life. There's just something kinda funny and amusing, but also sad and pathetic about the whole thing. And you can't help but wonder if the best thing for everyone might be to just pull the plug. Want to say a big thank you to my patrons for their support, including my tier 3 patron, Michael Coolwood. I'm working on a bunch of projects both on this channel and my main one, linked in the description, so if you want to stay on top of those as well as support what I do, then check out the link in the description and pledge on Patreon or donate to my Ko-fi. Otherwise, like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.